Hi and Assalamualaikum everyone. We are from class RAS1203B. We present to you about surviving 2 words on how frogs switch between skin and lung respiration. Before that, let me introduce my group member, which is Shahdina, Danisa, Fatin, Yasmin, Anis, and Izati.
Hi, my name is Yasmin Iman and I will be explaining about the introduction to our presentation today. So today we are going to present about frogs, which are amphibians that carry out vital function like respiration using both skin and lung. Other than that, it is also related to the ecology, which means the environment affects the frog's respiration, and also the anatomy of the frog that uses its skin for cutaneous respiration and also the lungs for pulmonary respiration. So today, the statement of purpose are: how do frogs switch between these methods, and also how do factors like temperature, moisture, and pollution affect their respiration?
Firstly, we're going to discuss about physiological data, which is about our gas action rate between frog at rest in water vs on land, which is firstly frog at rest in water, which is O2 uptake is majority by skin up to 16% to 18%, 85%. For CO2 release, majority by skin, which is 18% or more. And the factor is that water contains much less O2 than air, but CO2 is highly soluble in water. The frog lungs are essentially useless when submerged, making the skin critical. Second is frog at rest on land, which is O2 uptake is majority by lung is 16% to 75%. CO2 release majority by skin is 16% to 18%. The factor is the lungs are efficient for O2 uptake from the air. CO2 is highly diffusible and easily passes through the small skin, even in air, making it its primary site for its elimination. And what happens at frogs during high activity, which is stress or flight? Firstly, the O2 uptake is pulmonary system become absolutely dominant for O2 uptake. The frog will increase its rate and volume of lung ventilation to draw in the maximum amount of O2 from the air. The skin ability to diffuse O2 is generally diffusion limited and cannot keep up with the high demand of exercise. The lung capacity is essential to meet the increased O2 deficit. O2 uptake via lungs can exceed to 18% of total exchange. Secondly, the CO2 release. The skin remains very important for CO2 release, but the lung contribution also increase. Firstly, it increases the ventilation of the lung will expel more CO2 through these routes. However, due to the high solubility and particle pressure, gradient of CO2 is highly vascularized. Moist skin still plays a crucial role in elimination the majority of this metabolic waste, often accounting for over 60% of total CO2 release. Next, we're going to talk about the skin permeability and moisture, which is first the density of mucous glands. By from the observation, amphibian skin contains a high density of mucous glands, which are particularly abundant on the ventral trunk region in some species. Based on physiological role, the primary function of the mucous gland is to secrete a layer of mucus that continuously coat the epidermis. This mucus is critical because, first, it maintaining a moist surface, essential for gases to dissolve before diffusing across the cell membrane. Gas diffusion can only occur across a wet membrane. Secondly, it aids in osmoregulation and provides a first line of defense against pathogens. And this resulting in permeability. The necessity of the moist layer means that amphibian skin remains highly permeable to water, leading to high risk of water loss via evaporation. It's the critical constraint that links amphibian respiration to moist environment. Second is about capillary dispersion in skin. Based on our observations, frog skin is exceptionally well vascularized and unique, dense network of capillaries. Crucially, these capillaries are located extremely close to the skin surface, often penetrating the thin epidermis itself. Blood is supplied to the skin by continuous artery, which is branch of the pulmonocutaneous artery. This allows the flow of this oxygenated blood to the skin, maximize the O2 arterial pressure gradient for uptake. Thirdly, frog can partially regulate blood flow to the discontinuous capillary to cover gas exchange during specific conditions. Lastly, which is O2 diffusion rate across the skin sample. Based on our observation, the skin provides ignition and sometimes the majority are for O2 uptake, particularly when the frog is submerged or at rest, but it is ultimately diffusion limited. CO2 release, the skin is excellent at removing CO2, often accounting for the majority of CO2 release. This is because CO2 dissolves and diffuse easily. While for the O2 uptake, the skin is effective for O2 uptake, especially when the frog is resting or submerged. The limitation, since the skin relies on passive diffusion, its O2 uptake rate cannot increase fast enough to meet the high O2 demanding during activity or stress. When the frog is active, the lung must take over as the primary source of O2.
This study explores how different environmental factors affect the respiratory performance of frogs, focusing on temperature, water availability, and pollution exposure. Frogs are very sensitive to this change because they breathe through both their lungs and their skin. The first part looks at temperature and moisture. Since frogs are ectothermic, their metabolism changes with the environment. Higher air temperature make them breathe faster to meet oxygen demand, while lower temperatures slow their breathing. Water temperature also plays a role. When frogs are submerged, warm water with less dissolved oxygen forces them to work harder to breathe, while cooler waters allow more efficient oxygen uptake. Moisture is equally important because frogs need moist skin for gas exchange. Dry conditions reduce their ability to breathe through the skin and can increase stress. The second part is pollution exposure. Frogs indicators so pollutants like nitrates, pesticides, and heavy metals affect them quickly. By comparing frogs exposed to pollution with frogs in clean water, the study shows how contaminants can damage the skin, disrupt oxygen transport, and reduce overall oxygen uptake. The overall purpose of the study is to understand how natural and human-caused environmental change impact frog respiration. The findings help reveal frog adaptability, habitat suitability, and signs of environmental stress. Because frog can act as warning system for ecosystem health, changes in their respiratory performance can signal broader ecological problems.
Mechanisms of dual respiration. Frogs use continuous respiration to remove CO2 continuously in both water and on land. Pulmonary respiration becomes important when oxygen demand increases, like during activity, higher metabolism, or when on land. Rising CO2 levels in the body trigger the need for lung breathing. Low oxygen concentration also stimulates the switch from stimulation. Neural responses detect when gas exchange with the skin become insufficient. These signals from the frog to surface and ventilate its lungs to restore oxygen balance. Why frog need more skin? Gas exchange requires a clean, moist epithelial surface for efficient diffusion of O2 and CO2. moisture allows gases to dissolve and move across the skin effectively. Frogs are vulnerable to dehydration because dry skin stop diffusion. Without moisture, they cannot maintain proper gas exchange or prevent water loss. This dependence on moist skin forces them to live in semi-aquatic or humid habitats. Water availability, humidity, and stable temperature support effective respiration and survival.
Question 3A. Temperature and oxygen needs. The temperature and water availability significantly impact amphibian respiration, which is further limited by the animal size and threatened by the environmental changes. As ectotherms or cold-blooded animals, a frog's metabolic rate increases with temperature, creating a need for more oxygen in warmer environments. This is compounded by the physical constraint that warmer water holds less dissolved oxygen than colder water, which simultaneously make the environment more challenging for aquatic gas exchange. Regarding water availability, force the frog to remain on land or seek deep burrows, which increase its reliance on pulmonary respiration or lungs. Conversely, high water availability allows for continuous and efficient continuous respiration or skin breathing. A method often sufficient for meeting oxygen needs during low activity state. The primary limitation of continuous respiration in larger amphibians is the surface area to volume ratio. Gas exchange occurs across the skin surface area, but as an amphibian size increase, its oxygen need increase much faster than its surface area. This means a large frog simply lacks enough skin surface relative to its total body mass to acquire all the necessary oxygen needed solely through the skin, compelling a greater reliance on its lungs. Finally, environmental changes severely impact amphibian respiration because of the skin's delicate nature. Habitat loss such as the destruction or isolation of natural wetlands and forests directly impairs their ability to complete their biodiversity life cycle and find suitable moist places for respiration. In addition, pollution is highly dangerous due to direct toxins absorption. Since their skin is highly permeable, toxins like pesticide, herbicide, and heavy metals dissolved in water are absorbed directly into the bloodstream, thereby bypassing the detoxification process of the gut and liver. Regarding water availability, force the frog to remain on land or seek deep burrows, which increase its reliance on pulmonary respiration or lungs. Conversely, high water availability allows for continuous and efficient continuous respiration or skin breathing. A method often sufficient for meeting oxygen needs during low activity state. The primary limitation of continuous respiration in larger amphibians is the surface area to volume ratio. Amphibian respiration is governed by a delicate interplay of environmental constraints and biological vulnerabilities. Because frogs are ectotherms, their oxygen demand increases with temperature due to a faster metabolic rate, a need complicated by the physical fact that warmer water holds less dissolved oxygen. The primary respiratory method is determined by water availability. Dry conditions force a reliance on the lungs, while moist conditions allow for efficient skin breathing. The most severe threats are environmental. The highly permeable skin design for gas exchange is also a direct entry point for pollutants like pesticide and heavy metals, which are absorbed straight into the bloodstream by bypassing the body detoxification system. Furthermore, habitat loss, such as wetlands and forests, is detrimental because it removes the moist environment essential for the frog to breathe through its skin.
The amphibians' use of cutaneous and pulmonary respiration is a key adaptation for survival in both and terrestrial environments. While skin breathing primarily handles elimination in low activity states, lungs are vital for meeting high demands on land or during activity. The effectiveness of this dual system relies on a stable environmental balance, including moist skin, suitable temperature, and unpolluted habitats. Environmental stresses like habitat loss, dry conditions from climate change, and aquatic pollution directly impair this respiratory function. Therefore, by minimizing water pollution, raising awareness about amphibians' ecological importance, and conducting further research on climate change help the long-term viability of this unique respiratory adaptation. Well,